Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to talk about something that we've been talking about a lot recently, which is Solana versus Ethereum. Is Ethereum doomed to be flipped by Solana? Because I think it's possible, right? It's very, very possible. We'll talk about why. I mean, recently Solana's been doing very, very well, all the while Ethereum has really kind of been doing the exact opposite. It's either been doing bad or it's just been kind of doing nothing, while the rest of the market has been doing particularly pretty well, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to be going over why this could be. We're going to be going over like modular versus monolithic blockchains, how that impacts what we could potentially be seeing, some stats that we're seeing on DeFi Llama as well about, is Solana truly close to flipping Ethereum? How does that look? A lot of that type of stuff. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. We got a lot of stuff to get through today. So first off, we'll take a look at the daily chart or the daily crypto bubbles. We can see market overall green, things looking pretty decent here. If we do look at the week though, things still a little bit red. So, the market is still kind of just bouncing in and not really doing a whole lot in one direction or the other. So we're just keeping that in mind as we're making our trades, or potentially not making our trades, because when the market does this, it does just kind of bounce and chop around. If you have a good idea of how to play that type of stuff, you can do relatively well. If you don't, you're more of like a momentum trader, then this would probably not be the time to be doing that. But moving on, I want to take a quick look at Solana USDT, Solana versus Ethereum. Solana is the bars, Ethereum is the line chart. And so obviously, as we can see, since inception, Ethereum only up about 657%, while Solana is up about 8,000%. Now, keep in mind, this is not at all a fair comparison, because Ethereum was already a major blockchain in 2020 when Solana was like just barely getting started. So of course, as a percentage, not even comparable. So just something to consider there. But if we look, even if we look in like the bear market, right? We come have the bear market, everything collapses. Solana gets absolutely beaten on. We can see, ETH up about 2x from the lows of the bear market, or at least at this point, which is about early 2023. We can see though, Solana up about 855%. So even if we go further back, we can see, maybe it gets closer where we've got, Ethereum up about 140%, Solana up about just shy of 700%. We can see this is kind of before like the final capitulation of Solana. This was kind of like the pico bottom of Solana, and then it's obviously been a fantastic run from there on up. Even if we go a lot closer here, we can see 14% to negative 4% basically since March of 2024. So as we can see, Ethereum actually has not even reclaimed its highs from March 2024, if I remember correctly, while Solana has gone up even almost 50% higher at its peak there. So we can see kind of at all points, Solana has kind of outperformed Ethereum. And some of you who are Ethereum fans may be saying, well, this isn't exactly a fair comparison. Solana has a smaller market cap compared to Ethereum, which is totally fair. Ethereum is about 4 times the size of Solana, even still today. So, there is definitely a large disparity there. And so looking further into this, if we do check out CoinGecko, we can actually see exactly that, right? Ethereum's up here at 396 million, Solana here at 396 billion, and Solana here at 112 billion. Solana also not fully diluted yet too. So if we are to check into Solana, their fully diluted market cap is 137 billion. So just shy of half of what Ethereum is currently. So there's definitely a long way to go for Solana to flip Ethereum. But I will say, the momentum for Solana this cycle has been really quite strong. And so I'm not saying it's like likely, but I'm also not betting against Solana either. Now, the next thing that I want to check out is the DeFi Llama stuff. We're going to check out, how like the ecosystems on each chain are doing. But before we do that though, I did want to tell you that I do still have that link to BTCC in the description below. If you are looking to trade Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever, basically any altcoins that you want, they've got a ton of different altcoins available. They also are doing a 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a really, really sweet deal. Also extra bonuses up to $10,055 per user. So a bunch of money being thrown at you if you are interested in doing that. Also no VPN or KYC necessary if that is something you're important in. So like I said, if you're looking for a place to trade, maybe looking to get in on some of the action here in the market, I do have that link in the description below. Now moving on, I want to take a quick look at Solana, or at DeFi Llama though, because we can see Ethereum's got about $66 billion of TVL, and we can see here on Solana just shy of 11 billion. Now obviously, the move up from Solana recently has been really, really nice. If we look at volume, we can see obviously some ridiculous volume coming. This is when the whole Trump coin was released, but as we can see right now, we actually can see volume still hovering about $4 to $5 billion per day, which is pretty impressive. This is back roughly about the levels that we saw kicking off in early November. So we've seen even if we kind of pull it in close here, we can see things holding pretty level ever since about the middle of November, which is good to see. Also, if we take a look at fees, we can see that fees have gone up precipitously lately as well, and the same thing with revenue. It's going to look very similar. If we look at Ethereum, we can see a lot of the same thing. So obviously Ethereum has not returned back to its previous all-time highs of TVL, which was over 100 billion back in 2021. This was obviously kind of like peak alt season, things like that. And at that point in time, the only real alts, again, not like their own layer ones, were on Ethereum basically. So this does make kind of sense. Now, Solana, of course, has already returned to its previous all-time highs and actually passed it by a pretty fair margin, where we have not actually seen that happen yet for Ethereum. The highest we've actually ever gotten here is back to about 75 billion in TVL. So not quite, we're still about 25% off the previous all-time highs. If we do look at volume, we can see volume hovering about between like the $2 to $4 billion per day, with some spikes up in like the 6 to 8 billion range. Not even close to what we've seen on Solana recently. And then if we look at fees, we're going to see something where fees are actually substantially lower. Now, the important thing to note here is kind of twofold, and this is going to kind of segue us into our next conversation, which is discussing modular versus monolithic. As we can see in like the last bull run, fees for Ethereum were very, very high. Obviously, gas was ridiculously expensive. It was super difficult to interact with almost anything on the Ethereum blockchain, just because it was so expensive. But we can see, fees getting in at, even clocking in at over 100, even on this day, we saw, fees over $200 million in one particular day. So Ethereum definitely knows how to do volume, but you pay for it, right? I mean, it's very, very, very expensive to do anything on Ethereum. And as we can see since then, coming down really, really precipitously. So if we go and we look here, we can see, early 2024, I believe this is when they did the dank sharding. We can see ever since then, fees kind of peaking up here to about 40 million. And now we're getting anywhere from like, on low days, it's not even cracking a million, up to tops of like, 15 to 17 million. But I mean, it's very, very clear to see fees really, really falling off a bridge here. And if we go back and we take a look at Solana, we can kind of see the exact opposite, right? I mean, fees really kind of going nuts lately. And if we go in, we can see, highest fee day is 35 million, but right now, recently, we're hovering between about 7 to 10 million per day. So at least in the very recent history, Solana actually flipping Ethereum in terms of fees generated on chain per day. And obviously, Ethereum is going down, Solana is going up in terms of kind of how the chart is looking for fees on chain. Now, part of the reason, as I mentioned, is because one has decided to go the modular blockchain route and the other one has decided to go the monolithic blockchain route. So there's been a lot of discussion about, well, which is better here. So I want to just do a quick overview of what is modular versus monolithic, and then we can talk about kind of the pros and cons and why this matters between Solana and Ethereum. So what we can see here is there's kind of three things that matter in a blockchain. First off, we're talking about a monolithic blockchain, but basically you've got data availability, execution, and consensus. These are kind of the three core pieces to a blockchain. And of course, a monolithic blockchain is going to be working on all of these at once by itself. And then a modular blockchain has different ways to do this. Now, the reason this whole modular versus monolithic was kind of born out of is this blockchain trilemma. This is something that Vitalik talked about, years and years and years ago. But basically, his whole point was you want a blockchain to be scalable, secure, and decentralized, but you can pick two. So if you have, scalable and decentralized, then you've got like those multi-chain ecosystems because they're not really that secure. Now you've got scalable and secure, and you have the like typical high TPS chains, but they're also not decentralized. They're very centralized because that's how you get the high TPS. Now, if you go decentralized and secure, like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're not scalable because you can't have like the high TPS because the nodes just can't really handle it. Some of these are also older technology, so the technology isn't really built for it. There's kind of a lot of that type of stuff going on. And so with a monolithic blockchain, you can't really solve all three of these at once, is at least kind of what Vitalik's thesis is. So this is essentially where we get to the difference between monolithic and modular blockchains. A monolithic blockchain is effectively taking the bet that they can solve this blockchain trilemma and that the tech can be essentially worked around. This is essentially what like Solana is doing. Now, a modular blockchain is essentially like what Ethereum is doing. Ethereum is essentially saying, well, no, we can't do all three of these at once. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to be super decentralized and secure, but we're going to have a layer 2 or some other option where it can become more scalable, right? And so now each chain gets to choose what pieces they want to use to fit their exact needs. So, maybe some care more about decentralization, maybe some care more about security, and maybe some just care about high TPS. Now, if you think about like, you're a gaming chain, you probably care about scalable. And frankly, that's pretty much it, right? Maybe you want decentralized, maybe you don't care a whole lot. You probably want to be some level of secure, but you don't, like, it doesn't need to be like bank level security, right? And so when you're doing that type of thing, you can kind of like do the pros and cons, compare and contrast what you could get based on what you have. And so that's why this is so important, is because you can talk about like what you actually need versus like what's available, and then you can swap out different pieces. So if you need something for data availability, then maybe you could get something that's very, very cheap for data availability, but it's going to be less secure. Same thing if you go down to like execution. There's a whole bunch bunch of different execution things that, like, you know, some are more secure than others, some are quicker than others, some allow for higher throughput than others. And then same thing here with consensus. Consensus, of course, is, you know, kind of how you determine the state of the blockchain. And so how you just determine to do that depends on, you know, both speed as well as cost. So there's a whole bunch of different things between both modular and monolithic. And coming back to Solana and Ethereum, Solana has effectively taken the monolithic route, while Ethereum has taken the monolith, or the modular route, excuse me. And so essentially the bet that each one is making is Solana is saying, we think that we can solve this blockchain trilemma. You just aren't dreaming big enough. We think that we can come around the tech to actually get it to work. Now, the people on the Ethereum side are saying, okay, well, trust us, Solana. We've been there before. And looking from like the DeFi Llama numbers, we can see that, like, you know, they've done volume, definitely tried and tested over time. And so they're saying, you know, trust us, Solana, you just haven't gotten there yet. We've already been there, and we've figured out that you just can't do it this way. We need to go this next way. So you'll figure it out eventually. And so now we kind of have this feud going between Solana and Ethereum. Ethereum thinks that they've figured it out and they're going the modular route. Solana thinks they've figured it out and they're going the monolithic route. Now, in reality, I think what we're seeing here is a pretty interesting kind of split between the two, right? Because in my opinion, what Solana is doing actually makes more sense, and it's actually more valuable long term if they can in fact solve the technological problem. Now, some of you may say, oh yeah, well, it's been solved, right? I mean, Solana's going higher, number go up, and Ethereum number go down, so boom, fixed, done, right? Not quite, right? I mean, if we look at Solana, the transactions per second, I think, are between 45 and 4,800 transactions per second. Now, if you compare that to something like Ethereum, absolutely astronomical. That is a huge amount of transactions per second. But if we take a look at and compare this to something like Visa does like 700,000 transactions per second, right? Now, of course, if we are wanting blockchain to get into the like forefront of user adoption and kind of reach the heights that we think it can, that's the level of throughput that you need to get through. And even something like Sui, I think Sui's theoretical transactions per second at this point are like 297,000. So again, still less than half of what something like a Visa would require. So, I mean, realistically, you need a chain that can do 1 million plus transactions per second to be able to kind of fit all of the throughput that you need. And so that is kind of what Solana is up against. Now, they still could do it. Obviously, they're trending in the right direction, but there's a long, long way to go. We're but a small fraction of the way there. With Ethereum, it doesn't really matter as much, right? Because what they're essentially doing is they're making space on their layer 1. So now you could have a whole bunch of different layer 2s getting created to do anything you want, right? Think about it kind of like the internet. You could have like this internet of blockchains, and you could have, you know, a gaming chain for the specific game, and you could have a general ledger chain for the specific software and all this different type of stuff, but they all interact and work with each other. However, the issue on that side is that we haven't figured out the tech issue of fracturing liquidity, right? Because if you have 100,000 different chains, you're gonna have to bridge to 100,000 different chains, which is highly inconvenient. Also not really super practical. And that's why I think a lot of the like volume and interest on Ethereum has kind of died down. Because if you wanna do something interesting on Ethereum, okay, well, cool. Is it on the layer 1? Is it on Base? Is it on Arbitrum? Is it on Optimism? All of these require bridges between all of them. And so it's really kind of annoying and frustrating to kind of work through that. Now, I've heard that, like, you know, Polygon in particular is looking for kind of like this fractured liquidity. They may have a solution for that. And if they do, that obviously is massive news, because then that would kind of unify the liquidity again. And now one of the biggest problems about this whole modular blockchain situation is solved. So we'll have to kind of figure out, we'll see how that goes. Overall, I mean, I just kind of want to give you a quick dive of like, why is there's this whole like Solana versus Ethereum type of thing? Why is it so, you know, passionate? Why there's so many high stakes things about all this type of stuff? And so hopefully that was a pretty decent breakdown. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just drop in the comment section below. I'd be interested to know what your guys' thoughts are in terms of how I explained it. Did I do a good job? Did I do a bad job? All that type of stuff. I'd love to hear that in the comment section below. And also, if you did find the video helpful or useful or anything like that, please do give me a like and a subscribe, because that also really, really does help me out. I'm obviously, of course, always looking to try and get pushed further into the YouTube algorithm so I can get more eyes on my content, a lot of that type of stuff. So if you did find it helpful, that support really, really does help me out a lot. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.